Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Om Partaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratidam Puranamunina Madhye Mahabharadam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravinda Yatapatra Netra Yenatvaya Bharata Daila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetre Kapanaye Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Gitamrita Duhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogda Gopalanandana Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahata Vasudeva Sudam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Thank you all for joining us again. This is the last class of the Gita. Having talked about the 4 conditions for studying the Gita, tapas, bhakti, interest, and no carping, then Krishna talked about the benefit for the teacher, the one who studies the Gita, and one who chants the Gita. Then, to make sure his disciples really understanding this teaching, Krishna ended the last class with 2 very important questions for Arjuna. Have you listened to me, O Partha, with an attentive mind? Has the delusion of your ignorance been destroyed, O Dhananjaya? Now, let us hear Arjuna's response, after which we will cover the last 5 verses of the Bhagavad Gita. We'll chant verse 73. Arjuna uvacha nashto moha smritar labdha tvat prasadan mayachyuta stititosmi gata sandeha karishe vachanam tava. Now, together, slowly. Arjuna uvacha nashto moha smritir labdha tvat prasadan mayachyuta stitosmi gata sandeha karishe vachanam tava. I only changed it a little bit. Arjuna said, O Krishna, by your grace, my delusion has fled and I have gained wisdom. I am firm, all my doubts are gone. I will act according to your words. Shankaracharya's commentary. He says that by your grace means to me who is dependent on your grace. And my delusion has fled means that delusion is born of ignorance or ajnana, the cause of the entire evil of samsara and very difficult to cross. I have gained memory means it's memory of the true nature of the self, the attainment of which all the bonds of the heart are loosened. And he continues, by this question and answer about the destruction of delusion, it is shown conclusively that the only purpose of Shastra knowledge is this: destroying the delusion from ignorance and the attaining recognition of the self. And now I am firm, waiting for your command, with doubts gone, freed from uncertainty. I will do your word. By this, Arjuna means to say, through your grace, I have attained the supreme end of life, and there is nothing more for me to do. Now, Jnaneshwar's commentary. Some of this is coming from verse 66 because I thought it would be better in this context. Then the Lord said further, O Dhananjaya, it requires extraordinary strength of good luck to secure the secret treasure, but rarely one is able to enjoy it. Then Arjuna said, O Lord, why do you ask whether I still have that delusion? It has already left me completely. Will it be reasonable for the sun to ask, do you see darkness? In the same way, isn't your presence sufficient to dispel this delusion? You have explained the knowledge to me in detail, with affection greater than that of a mother. Now, if you ask me whether I have eliminated my delusion, I readily tell you that through your grace I have accomplished my object. I was entangled in the notion I am Arjuna, but after becoming one with you, I have become free from it. Through your grace, I have come to realize the self and cast away my delusion. It was through the notion of duality that I was bothered by the question whether I should fight or not fight. Now I know nothing in this world except you. I do not feel even a shadow of doubt about it. I have now reached that state in which nothing remains for me to do. I have realized my essential nature through you, and there remains nothing for me to do except your directions. You are my Guru, my God, the sight of whom wipes away the visible universe. You, who, although dual, removes all duality, who, although single, pervades everything, whose very touch snaps all bonds, who, when longed for, destroys all longings, who, when met with, brings the meeting of one's own self, who keeps company in solitude and leads one beyond the knowledge of non-duality. If, after becoming Brahman and relinquishing all actions, good or bad, I wish to serve you faithfully, you give the devotee a share of your divinity, just as the river Ganges goes to serve the ocean, and it itself becomes the ocean. You have removed the screen of separation that existed between us, and you bestowed upon me the sweet joy of serving you. O God of gods, I shall do whatever you command me to do. Hearing Arjuna's words, the Lord danced madly with joy and said to himself, in Arjuna, I have secured the best of all the fruits in the world. Now, Swami Chidbhavananda's commentary. At the start, Arjuna declined to fight and sat dejected in the chariot. But he was thoroughly transformed after hearing the Lord's invigorating message. Fuel for a fire becomes fire as it should. In that manner, Arjuna became an instrument of the Lord. He surrendered his individuality and regained oneness with the Paramatman. Before, life seemed an unbearable burden for Arjuna. He could neither carry it nor rid himself of it. He would have preferred non-existence to existence. He who was in such a plight is now completely free from delusion. The self-created problems have all melted away like a dream. Life and death, duty and its end, bondage and freedom. Questions pertaining to these dualities are all resolved, along with the destruction of delusion. A drunken man forgets himself completely, and he doesn't know how he acts and what he says. People attached to earthly life suffer from a frenzy of their own. Arjuna, however, has now awakened to reality. In a purified mind, Atma Bodha, pure awareness, dawns on its own. That experience is here delineated as regaining one's own memory. The Lord's grace is indispensable in reawakening the Jivatman into his original state. Arjuna did not regain memory of his supreme state solely on his own effort. Sri Krishna had to play his part, and Arjuna is fully aware of it. It is impossible to repay that divine act. The only thing he is capable of doing is humbly admit that he owes everything to Krishna's divine intervention. When a tempest and a torrential rain come at the same time, all trees and plants are either uprooted or destroyed. But a mountain remains unaffected by this catastrophe. It is firm in its place. Knowledge of Brahman makes one firm as a rock. One who is established in Brahman is a person of steady wisdom, a sthita prajna. Arjuna has attained that state now. Nothing on earth or heaven can disturb his understanding. Having gained this knowledge once, that one of wisdom never loses it again. With this, we can see the 4 blessings Krishna gave Arjuna. Number 1, his delusion was destroyed. Number 2, he regained his memory, which means memory of the true nature of the self. And number 3, he received Krishna's grace. And number 4, he became firm. Arjuna's last words in the Gita are, "I will act according to your words." You can see what he declined to do at the start, he chooses to do afterwards due to right understanding. Now a quote from Sri Ramakrishna Deva. "A tadpole can live both in water and on land after it sheds its tail. The tail of ignorance drops off from us when we realize Brahman. We then become a Jivan Mukta, a liberated soul, enabling us to simultaneously live in the world and rest in Brahman." This is exactly what Amma does. She lives in the same world we do, but being a Brahmajnani, a knower of Brahman, her awareness can flow to each and every individual in this world, and she understands their mental and physical conditions. I had an experience that showed me the unique nature of Amma's holistic vision. During a Devi Bhava in New York, Amma told me to come in the camper with her after darshan. Actually, I felt sad to hear this, as I knew that it meant that even after a long Devi Bhava darshan, Amma was probably going to do some work in the RV instead of taking rest. Sure enough, as soon as the car started moving, Amma started to give instructions about some work that she had for me to do. The roads on the way out of New York were very bumpy, and the whole camper was rattling and lurching as though we were in an earthquake. I was trying to take notes while listening by typing on a laptop, but I could hardly remain sitting on the ground, much less type anything. Nevertheless, Amma continued her explanation as though nothing were wrong. After some time, she turned and started to dictate something in Malayalam to somebody else, Dr. Priya, who was also trying to type it on her computer. The highest spiritual truths flowed effortlessly from Amma's lips. "Love is the manifestation of the true self," she said. It is love that strings the entire creation together in one single thread. That's why it is said that God is love. We were spellbound by Amma's deep wisdom. Amma went on for some time, but the combination of the bumpy road and trying to focus on the computer screen succeeded in making me feel very carsick. My stomach was turning somersaults, and my breathing became very short and choppy. At that point, Amma turned back to me and resumed the earlier conversation we were having. I couldn't focus on anything. All I could think was, "Oh my God, what if I get sick and throw up right in front of Amma? Will she ever forgive me? I mean, we all want the Guru to take away our impurities, but not like that." I somehow managed to hide my queasiness for a while, as much as we can hide anything from Amma. But finally, it became unbearable. I was becoming so lightheaded that I was about to pass out, So I tried to make a feeble hand gesture like this, like that, to show Amma that I was feeling nauseous. But since I was getting delirious, my hand gesture ended up looking more like this, as though I were calling Amma to come closer to me. Can you imagine such an arrogant disciple? Motioning gruffly to the Guru like a king to come closer and speak more clearly. But it didn't bother Amma at all. She very innocently and humbly got up, came over to me, and continued her explanation by holding my head and speaking right into my ear. Then I managed to mumble, "Amma, I'm feeling very sick." And Amma smiled and said, "I know. Now lie down and go to sleep." What could I do? Given the options, I chose the lesser of the two evils and slept off the nausea. Just imagine the situation. After giving darshan non-stop for over 13 hours, Amma gets in the car and, as fresh as ever, starts to give the most profound teachings on the totality of the universe. Midway through, she suddenly shifts her vision from the totality to the individual, in this case a sickly and seemingly arrogant individual, and shows so much humility and compassion for his predicament. Amma's own words explain how she can do this. She says, "The entire universe is contained within the true Master. Her consciousness is one with the universal consciousness that shines in and through all of creation. She sees, hears, smells, eats, and breathes through everybody. The Master is infinity itself." Now back to Arjuna. He had been an ideal student and disciple. But because the teaching was conveyed in a hurry on a battlefield, Arjuna faces some memory problems later. Later on in the Mahabharata, Arjuna tells Krishna, "I forgot everything, so please repeat the Gita teachings." Krishna replied that a repetition is not possible, but he gives a condensed version of the Gita, which is called the Anugita. There should be 2 links in this description area, so you can download it. But when Arjuna looks at his mind right now, in the present, he feels the teaching is complete. This problem of forgetfulness is there for everyone. This is why we need nididhyasanam, a simulative meditation. Because during the class, the spiritual atmosphere helps us to understand and retain the teachings. But the longer the gap becomes, or the longer you miss Amma's daily programs, the more your mind forgets the teachings. Especially because something else in your life will replace the teachings, making it more and more difficult to remember. Our emotions too will gradually replace spiritual thoughts if we don't continue our scriptural studies, including Amma's books. Now, why is Arjuna's delusion gone? Because, as Arjuna said, "I have gained wisdom." Without self-knowledge, delusion will not go away. In the beginning, Arjuna was confused about his swadharma. Since I am a disciple of Bhishma and Drona, is it right to kill them? If I do kill them, will I get bad karma? But now he says, "I am firm, all my doubts are gone," which means that the original problem is now gone. I will do my swadharma. Also, Arjuna is no longer concerned about the outcome, whether it is success or failure. So with this, the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna is over, which also means that the Gita teaching is complete. Praising the benefits of this teaching is also complete. What is next? Maybe we can call it customer satisfaction. Arjuna is definitely satisfied, but there were 2 more listeners, Sanjaya and Dhritarashtra. Are they satisfied? The Gita opened with Dhritarashtra's words, "Assembled on the field of Dharma, O Sanjaya, on the field of the Kurus, eager to fight, what did my people and the Pandavas do? And at the end, Sanjaya's final comments start in the next verse. But before we move on to verse 73, Jnaneshwar has more details that set the stage. Sanjaya was transported with joy, seeing the union of Arjuna and Lord Krishna on the altar of dialogue. Overflowing with joy, Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra, "Oh, what a blessing! The merciful Vyasa has protected us in this war. You are now blessed with the vision of knowledge, although you lack the physical sight to deal with the worldly affairs. I, a chariot driver, got this opportunity to hear the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. On this dreadful occasion of a war, whichever party is defeated, it will be our loss." Dhritarashtra said quietly, "Just as a rock does not react under moonlight, so too, Sanjaya's words had no effect on the heart of Dhritarashtra. Seeing this condition, Sanjaya understood that his words did not appeal to the king. But crazy with great happiness, he began to speak again in ecstatic joy, though he knew that the king was not worthy of hearing it." Now let's chant verse 74. Sanjaya uvacha ityaham vasudevasya partasya cha mahatmanah samvadam imam ashrausham adbhudam romaharshanam. Now together slowly. Sanjaya uvacha ityaham vasudevasya partasya cha mahatmanah samvadamimam ashrausham adbhudam romaharshanam. Sanjaya says, "Thus have I heard this mysterious dialogue between Vasudeva and the high-souled Partha, causing my hair to stand on end." Jnaneshwar's commentary. Sanjaya said, "O king, Lord Krishna was overjoyed to hear what Arjuna said. The eastern and western seas bear different names, but their water is the same. In the same way, Lord Krishna and Arjuna have separate bodies, but this distinction disappeared in their conversation. Arjuna saw himself in the Lord, and simultaneously, Sri Krishna also saw himself in Partha. When the Lord was thinking of his devotee, he saw the form of the devotee in his own form. As all distinction between the two disappeared, they became identified with each other. Since the distinction between the two vanished, how can there be any questioning between the two? How can there be any pleasure from their conversation? When they were conversing with each other in the plane of duality, I heard that conversation, which ended with the loss of their distinction. If two mirrors are placed before each other, how can we say which saw which? Or if two lamps are kept one in front of the other, who can say which borrowed whose light? If another sun rises in the sky, who can say which one gives light and which receives light? When we think about it, all thought comes to a standstill. Both of them had become so engrossed in the conversation. If salt is placed between two currents of water to keep them separate, the salt too becomes water in no time. I too was reduced to the same state when I was thinking of the conversation between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. As Sanjaya was talking like this, he was so overcome by sattvic emotions that he lost consciousness of being Sanjaya. The hair on his body began to stand. His limbs had wrinkles. His body became still and was covered with sweat and vibrating. you might not know that in the early years of Amma's Krishna Bhavas, Amma's whole body would shake throughout the Krishna Bhava. Back to the commentary. Sanjaya enjoyed the bliss of the non-dual state, and his eyes shed copious tears of joy. No, they were not tears. It was his heart overflowing. He could not contain this joy within his heart. His throat became choked. His speech became stifled through suffocation. In short, these 8 sattvic emotions made Sanjaya speechless, and he became the meeting place of bliss, arising from their conversation, so to speak. But the nature of the bliss was such that it calmed down on its own, and Sanjaya soon regained his consciousness. In the verse, the word Mahatmanaha comes, but that word has different meanings. Typically, we use it in the sense of Amma is a Mahatma and was born divine, which means that we view her as a self-realized being. In the other sense, the word Mahatma is used when we are referring to a high-souled person, as in this verse. However, this second usage does not imply that the high-souled person is realized and free from faults. An example would be Mahatma Gandhi, who inspired many people but was ultimately a normal person like all of us. Thus, in this verse, the correct usage would be the latter version, because Sanjaya is referring to Arjuna, not Lord Krishna. After all, Arjuna deserves the commendation because he was a fine disciple. Why did Sanjaya call it a mysterious dialogue? The word he used here is adbudam, which means wonderful. A similar word, ascharyavat, which means a wonder, was used in chapter 2, verse 29. One beholds the Atma as a wonder, another mentions it as a wonder, another again hears it of a wonder. Though hearing, another knows it not at all. In other words, the Atma is inscrutable. Therefore, the Atma is wonderful. And the teacher talks about the Atma that cannot be talked about. So the indescribable Atma is described, and the ungraspable Atma is grasped. The Atma, which is not an object of knowledge, is recognized. The Atma, which is not an object of description, is described. What a wonder. In the Kathopanishad, I would like to share a verse. The one who explains it is wonderful, and the receiver is wonderful. Wonderful is one who knows, under the instruction of a master. It is such a wonder that it causes people's hair to stand on end. What an amazing dialogue, which we can also get from Amma. A question may arise as to how it was possible for Sanjaya to know everything about this dialogue that took place in the far-off battlefield. The answer to this question comes from Sanjaya himself in the next verse. Verse 75. Vyasa prasadatruttavan imam guhyam aham param yogam yogeshwarat krishnat sakshat kattayata swayam. Now slowly together. Vyasa prasad tatruttavan imam guhyam aham param yogam yogeshwarat krishnat sakshat kattayata swayam. I did change some things in this verse. By the grace of sage Vyasa, I have heard this supremely esoteric teaching, the most profound yoga, which Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, has spoken directly in person. Now, Shankaracharya's commentary. By the grace of sage Vyasa means having obtained from Vyasa a divine vision, Divya Chakshuhu, which was originally offered to Dhritarashtra, but he refused because he was afraid to see the battle and the carnage and all that. This supremely esoteric teaching means this dialogue is called yoga because it leads to yoga, or we can even just say it itself is yoga. Yoga is twofold, jnana yoga and karma yoga. And this dialogue leads to both of them. This dialogue is a means to yoga, concentration of the mind. Therefore, it itself is yoga. Now, Jnaneshwar's commentary. When Sanjaya's joy subsided, he said, "Through the favor of Vyasa, I have heard the secret which even the Upanishads do not know. After hearing it, I was enveloped in the Brahmic state, and the world, with its differentiation of I and you, disappeared. I could hear through the grace of sage Vyasa the words of Lord Krishna, in whom all the paths of yoga became merged." In this verse, Sanjaya expresses his gratitude to Vyasacharya. Otherwise, Sanjaya would have been stuck in the palace and would have no chance to listen to the dialogue taking place on the battlefield. It is only due to Vyasa that Sanjaya got the divine sight, and he could see the people, hear the dialogue, even feel the emotions of other people. Sanjaya could even grasp Arjuna's feelings. So it was not only light and sound, but also thoughts, all because of Vyasa's blessings. Here, yoga indicates all the sadhanas, karma yoga, upasana, and jnana yoga, all put together. Now let us move on to verse 76. Rajan samsmritya samsmritya samvadam imam adbhutam keshavarjunayo punyam rishami cha muhurmuhu. Now together slowly. Rajan samsmritya samsmritya samvadam imam adbhutam keshavarjunayo punyam rishami cha muhurmuhu. I didn't change anything, but I'll just read it out. O King, remembering over and over again this mystic dialogue between Keshava and Arjuna, I rejoice. Shankaracharya explains why it is called a mystic dialogue, because it destroys a person's sins just by hearing the Gita. Now Jnaneshwar's commentary. As Sanjaya was talking like this to Dhritarashtra, he became wonderstruck and lost consciousness. Just as a jewel glitters one moment and stops in the next moment, so too, when Sanjaya regained consciousness, he would recollect the conversation between Lord Krishna and Arjuna, and in wonderment would again lose consciousness. This state repeated itself off and on. Jnaneshwar's commentary reminds me of my early days here in Amritapuri. During bhajans, Amma would often cry with a mystic smile on her face at the same time. And when she couldn't control herself, she would tap her head now and again, as if to prevent herself from going into samadhi. Many nights after bhajans, she would walk through the coconut grove in pitch dark, singing softly and immersed in rapture. In this verse, Sanjaya expresses his delight. He says, when I look back on this unique opportunity, I enjoy thinking of it again and again. The more I remember it, the happier I become. The best book is one that makes you want to read it again and again. Magazines and newspapers are soon disposed, but not books or texts that touch you deeply. That is why we have the word Puranam, the etymology of which is Pura api navam, old yet fresh at the same time. The same goes for the Gita. No matter how many times you read it, you never become tired of it. Now let's move on to verse 77. Tacca samsmritya samsmritya rupam atyadbhutam harehe vismayo me mahan rajan Rishyami cha puna puna. Now together slowly. Tacca samsmritya samsmritya rupam atyabhutam harehe vismayo me mahan rajan rishyami cha puna puna. I didn't change anything, but I'll read it out. And as I recall and remember that most wonderful form of Sri Krishna, great is my wonder, O King, and I rejoice again and again. Shankaracharya says that that most wonderful form means the Vishwarupa, the universal form. Now, Jnaneshwar's commentary. Then Sanjaya stood up and said to the king, O king, how could you remain unmoved even after seeing the universal form of Lord Hari? How can one miss that which becomes discernible without seeing, which looks non-existent, but is existence, and enters into your memory even though you forget it? There is no scope left even to be amazed about it. It is such a great flood of ecstatic joy, it is carrying me away. Thus, I took a bath in the holy confluence of the dialogue between Lord Krishna and Arjuna, and cast away my egoism. In a rapturous state, Sanjaya muttered a few strange words, and with a choked throat he repeated, Krishna, Krishna, now and then. But King Dhritarashtra was totally unaware of Sanjaya's state and was making different plans in his mind. Then Sanjaya absorbed within himself the ecstatic joy he was experiencing and pacified his sattvic feelings. Instead of asking questions suitable for the occasion, King Dhritarashtra said to Sanjaya, O Sanjaya, where are your manners? With what objective did Vyasa post you here? What unsuitable words for the occasion are you indulging in? It was natural that what Sanjaya was saying seemed improper to Dhritarashtra. Then the king said, Tell me, what is going on? Who will be victorious in this war? I guess that the valor of Duryodhana is more than that of others, and his army also is 1.5 times greater than the army of the Pandavas. So I feel that his victory is certain. I don't know what your prediction is, but do tell me, whatever it may be. That means he's not convinced, but he's just saying, I'm certain. What do you think? Obviously, he has doubts. And Swami Chidbhavananda's commentary. It was by chance that Sanjaya was blessed with the vision of the Lord's cosmic form, which is rare even for yogis and devotees. Incidental though this vision was, it was a rare gift inducing him to the path of yoga. In fact, at all times, all souls have a minute aspect of the vision of God's cosmic form. But they do not know how to avail themselves of that vision for further spiritual progress. Every individual can summarize a sublime vision of nature, a sublime experience, or a sublime state of mind. that came to them in the course of their life. That divine contact is a tiny speck of the vision of the cosmic form. Sanjaya said the whole teaching was wonderful. Then he tries to find out which one he liked the most. It's like when people watch a movie on Netflix or HBO and can't decide which scene was the best or which actor was the best. Similarly, if someone asks us, which part of the Gita do you like the most? We will look back on our Gita study. Each of us will have a different answer. That is Sanjaya's condition. When he said, remembering that most wonderful form of Sri Krishna, great is my wonder, it means Sanjaya feels that the Vishwarupa Darshan is the best. Why? Because that was when he saw the totality, the holistic vision, the wholeness of creation. And that holds for all of us too. The vision of oneness makes life more peaceful and stable. How can we say that? Because our life becomes miserable when we forget or reject that everything is connected in this world. We celebrate birth, but we disdain death, even though both are inescapable. When we are young, we refuse to even think about old age. People seek to acquire wealth and dread losing it, even though others need it desperately. These are all examples of the basic law, yoga and viyoga. Here, yoga means union, while viyoga means separation. So the law is that life is simply union and separation repeated over and over again. You struggle to make money, yoga. Then you spend all the money to buy a house, viyoga. In this case, you have no objections because the outcome was per the plan. But life doesn't always go the way we want it to. What if you struggle to make money and invest it in the stock market so you can pay for your child's college? That's yoga, because you're increasing your money. However, the stock market crashes right when you needed the money, viyoga. This time, the separation is extremely painful because it was unexpected. You feel happy when you find a partner, but the breakup is so painful. These are simply examples of a fundamental and inescapable law. Our lives are a series of joining and separating, sometimes pleasant, sometimes painful. If we cannot accept these perennial fluctuations in life, we will never be peaceful and stable. That is where the Vishwarupa comes to the rescue. Looking at the world from the standpoint of oneness, we learn to accept all changes as they come. Then the whole universe becomes wonderful. A narrow vision makes life miserable, boring, and unhappy. No wonder Sanjaya felt to choose the Vishwarupa Darshan as the best. Remember, Krishna had to give Arjuna a divine eye to be able to see the Vishwarupa. But the true Vishwarupa Darshan is possible only for one who is established in self-knowledge, because they don't identify with the body. They are beyond all qualities, detached towards the world, and have realized, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. That is unified vision. Finally, Sanjaya concludes by glorifying this teaching in the last verse. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha Tatra Shriya Vijayo Bhutir Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. Now together slowly. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha Tatra Shrir Vijayo Bhutir Dhruva Nitir matir mama. I didn't change anything. Wherever there is Sri Krishna, the Lord of Yoga, and wherever is Partha, the wielder of the bow, there are goodness, victory, glory, and unfailing righteousness. Such is my conviction. Shankaracharya's commentary, the Lord of Yoga. He explains that to be the Lord of all yogas, since the seed of all yoga originates from him. All yoga, both Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga, have for their seed discernment, viveka, and non-attachment, vairagya, which arise from the Shastra. And this seed depends on the Lord, since it is impossible to attain without His grace. Therefore, since yoga and its fruit are attainable only through the Lord's grace, He, or we can say Amma, is the Lord of Yoga. Jnaneshwar's commentary. Hearing the king's words, Sanjaya said, I don't know which party will be victorious in the battle, but it is clear that wherever there is longevity, there is life. Where there is the moon, there is moonlight. Where there is Lord Shiva, there is Parvati. And where there are saints, there is discernment. Where there is the king, there is the army. Where there is a warm feeling, there is a good relationship. Where there is fire, there is heat power. Where there is kindness, there is righteousness. Where there is righteousness, there is happiness. And where there is happiness, there must be the Purushottamam, the Supreme Person. That's because happiness is a manifestation of the Supreme Person. Continuing. Where there is the spring season, there must be flowers, and where there are flowers, there must be bees. Further, when there is a guru, there must be knowledge. Where there is knowledge, there must be self-realization. And with realization of the self, there must be self-satisfaction. Where there is Lord Krishna, who is the protector of the Purusharthas, Artha, Kama, Dharma, Moksha, there is Goddess Lakshmi, and where there is this Mother of the Universe, along with her Lord, how could there not be her maids, the 8 Siddhis? These are supernatural powers, and I'll explain them to you just briefly. And when you explain them, it's easier to hear it in pairs. Anima and Mahima, that means you can become very small or very large. Laghima and Garima, that means you can become very heavy or very, very light. And Prapti Prakamya means you can attain anything, fulfill any desires. And Ishita and Vashita means you can control all aspects of existence and minds. Now, by the way, I'm sure that Amma would say, even if you get all 8 siddhis, the more important question is, are you happy? Now, back to the commentary. Lord Krishna is himself victory incarnate. So victory will run to that place as fast as possible. To me, the answer is, duh, Krishna's side is going to win. Now, Swami Chidbhavananda's commentary. Subordinating human will to the divine does not mean fatalism. Activity depending on God's will is the right approach to life. And that is what the Pandavas did from start to finish. In contrast, the Kauda approach to life had its defects. It was tyranny in defiance of Lord Krishna himself. This way of life seems all prosperity at the beginning, but it ends in tragic disaster. Arjuna represents the human being, or the Jivatman, the inheritor of divine grace, faithfully discharging one's duty and at the same time being ardently devoted to and dependent on God, are the unfailing means to secure grace. Partha, the wielder of the bow, symbolizes human effort. Sunlight falls uniformly and equally on all objects, but it doesn't reveal its original grandeur through all things. A water glass and polished metal receive sunlight and reflect it brilliantly. Such is also the case with the brilliance of divine grace. It is available to all equally and without partiality, yet it is best reflected in the hearts of the good and pious. So the essence of this verse is, wherever Krishna and Arjuna are, all auspiciousness will come. But how can we say this? Arjuna is long gone, and even Krishna as an avatara has disappeared. So what does this mean? Actually, it is only about remembrance. When we remember Krishna or Amma and Arjuna, our mind will be full with auspiciousness. And what does auspiciousness mean in the first place? The word is another rather feeble attempt to translate a special Sanskrit word, Sri. Out of curiosity, I decided to look it up in a Sanskrit English dictionary. I found about 40 words. That shows us just how flexible this word can be. Here are a few examples: prosperity, wealth, well-being, happiness, good fortune, success, thriving, plenty, dignity, sacredness, majesty, glory, fame, renown, beauty, grace, splendor, and so many more. Despite the flexibility of the word Sri, we can say that all of the meanings have a connotation of goodness. So we can just think of Sri as things you would want without any bad side effects. And remember that this verse specifies Yogeshwara Krishna, the Lord of Yoga. As we just heard in Shankaracharya's commentary, Lord of Yoga means the one whose grace enables seekers to attain discernment and dispassion, without which we cannot progress on the path. So for us, this means Amma. Now, why should Arjuna be remembered? In this case, the bow is mentioned, a symbol of Arjuna's duty, his swadharma. That should remind us of our swadharma and help us summon the strength we need to stick to our duty, whether we are working in a company, teaching something, or taking care of your family. Thus, remembrance of Krishna and Arjuna, or simply Amma, is nothing but remembrance of the Gita teachings. There are some good reminders in certain verses. You have control over action alone, never over its fruits. Better is death in one's own dharma. The dharma of another brings danger. When we remember these important teachings, which are nothing other than Amma's teachings, we can convert our life from a bitter one to a happy one, full of Sri, prosperity, wealth, success, God's grace, Lakshmi. Sanjaya says that righteousness will also be with us, and it will be lasting. Basically, all goodness will come to us, and eventually moksha. Thus, the Gita teaching is beneficial for everyone who remembers it. With this, chapter 18 and the whole Gita is concluded. Now let us chant the traditional shloka that comes at the end of every chapter. Om Tat Sata Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Moksha Sannyasa Yogo Nama Ashtadashodhyaya. The meaning is Om Tat Sat. Thus ends the 18th chapter named Moksha Sannyasa Yoga, liberation through renunciation. in the Upanishad of the Bhagavad Gita, the knowledge of Brahman, the science of yoga, in the form of the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna. Though the Gita class is now over, the tradition is that we have to go back to the very first verse and chant that again. The idea is that we never finish studying the Gita. We don't go through the teaching has to go through us. So we will chant this together. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kimakurvata Sanjaya. The meaning is, Dhritarashtra said, assembled on the field of Dharma, O Sanjaya, on the field of the Kurus, eager to fight, what did my people and the Pandavas do? For the blind king Dhritarashtra, the Mahabharata war created enormous tension and worry. That was because he was helpless and on his own and depending on the power of human beings. That too, a despicable bunch of human beings. And the situation would have been the same even if the Kauravas won, because they would have been worried about enemies attacking and treachery within the kingdom. The singular reason for all that nervous strain was their dependence on worldly power and their absolute refusal to even think of surrendering to Lord Krishna. Now that we are back in the beginning of the Gita, we can more clearly see our own faults and delusions. Are we depending on the world or Amma? Do we have the humility to surrender everything to Amma, even when, to all appearances, it looks like we accomplished something? The battlefield of your worldly life increases your spiritual strength, and your spiritual life increases your strength in the world. Remember this and never turn back. Unquestionably, we will emerge victorious through the inner conflict, not due to wealth, intelligence, influence, charisma, not even due to pilgrimages and siddhis. The one and only reason why we will be able to extricate ourselves from samsara is our undivided devotion to Amma. When we have no interest in anything else but Amma, and when we see nothing other than Amma, then know that moksha is near. Let us all pray that this day comes soon by her immeasurable grace. Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. Now let us conclude with the closing prayers. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.